I would hear something new that I can learn something from Uthman. So, the title that we had, I think initially it was meant to be a different title, but we had to change it for some reasons that I haven't been properly explained. But the one that we have today is, what does the world need, Islam or atheism? I see this, the word world in this statement. I don't know how Uthman would view it. I see it as a society, not at an individual scale. So I don't personally care what people hold privately. It doesn't really bother me, whatever views you have privately, but what does matter is what your views are when it impacts our society, the society we live in, and that's where the problem arises. We have one end, we have someone who wants to run a society with their favored theology, and then on the other hand, I'm sure I'm going to get accused at some point, or there are people who are accused of being militant atheist, and they would want to run the society their way, where they look into banning religion, etc. So I'm just setting record straight that I'm not one of those people. I see this question as a little bit arrogant in its nature. I mean, Islam or atheism, as if there's nothing else, or as if Islam is the only game in town. What about Christianity, or what about Judaism, or what about Hinduism, etc.? Islam is nothing special than 10,000 other gods that we've had, dead or alive. We have quite a few theologies over the course of recorded human history. The why Islam? Okay, well, I guess I've been asked, and I'm a part of this debate because I do have Islamic background. I was born a Muslim. I was raised as a Muslim despite I didn't have any choice in that. I was just told I was a Muslim. There was azan given in my ear when I was a baby. Probably I didn't understand what was being shouted in my ear when I was probably 2 days old. But apparently that made me a Muslim. So you had to grow up to understand that. And as I said, Islam just is like any other religion. It makes a special claim, just like any other religion. It makes big claims how the universe came into existence and how we should live our spiritual lives or private lives. It starts from the very top, from the biggest questions down to the smallest points that one could make. Something as simple as what you should do when you go to the bathroom. That is something that is taught to us in Islam as well. That's fine. As I said, privately you can believe whatever you want to believe. I've got no problem with that. But I don't want the society to be run on those principles. My position personally, as I said, is I'm an atheist. It's just a negation of that position that a lot of people in this room might take. That's it. There's nothing more than atheism. So from now on, I would not be advocating for atheism. I would be advocating for secularism, because I think that is a reasonable position to take. So why secularism? I mean, as I already said, that I wouldn't stand for any militant atheist who would want to ban religion, who would want you to stop going to a mosque, or you want to fast in the month of Ramadan, or whichever fairy tale god, which I would view as fairy tale and a lot of other people would believe as a false deity. You want to believe in that, go ahead. That doesn't bother me. But secularism seems like the only logical position that one hand you have one position, on the other hand you have another extreme position. The logical position would be to meet somewhere in the middle. Let's not have it the militant atheistic way, and let's not have it your theocratic militant way. And secularism is the only position that would allow us to have that, where we can all coexist peacefully, we can all agree to disagree, and we can go about our lives. But if I am urged to ask, yeah, why not Islam? I mean, Islam does make a lot of sense to a lot of people. The number keeps rising, as we are told. The reasons for that growth are debatable. We're often told that Islam gives us the objective truth. Whatever is told in it, it's objective. It's coming from a divine being who created the billions of galaxies in the universe, and that's it. Whatever he tells us, it makes sense. That's how it is supposed to be. So that's objective in nature. It can't be subjective. It can't be open to question. It can't be challenged. But if we actually look in the private life of Muhammad, when Muhammad was alive, these objective truths were changing quite rapidly. We have I'm not sure how many people know, but I have noticed in my experience that a lot of Muslims actually don't know a lot about Islam. I'm sure educated people like Uthman themselves are aware of these things. I mean, certain things like abrogation of verses, where Allah sends one verse to Muhammad, and then when he sees a problem with that, he changes it. And this is objective truth being changed with time. So how are we to believe that what was told 1400 years ago, and when Muhammad died, then that's it? Now there can't be any abrogation of verses. Islam is no different from other religions in terms of spirituality. I mean, you all have your rituals, you all have your practices, how you're going to carry on with your life every day. But Islam is a little bit unique because it wants to keep going. It still hasn't abandoned the idea of becoming a very fabric of society. It wants to be a political force. That's why Islam is unique, and that's why we are seeing more and more of these debates. And as in the coming decades, I believe that would probably become more of an issue. And I mean, we can see, I mean, it's definitely not the case with other religions. I mean, Christianity dropped the idea of being a part of the society as a political force. There are a lot of secular Christian states with majority Christian population. The only Hindu country in the world, the big Hindu country, India, is at least by constitution is a secular country where all people can live peacefully. And believe it or not, I mean, Israel also is a secular country in constitution. I mean, I'm very sympathetic towards the plight of Muslims in Israel, but at least on paper, Muslims or Jews don't have any extra rights over Muslims. My country, Pakistan, I mean, when it was founded on the basis of Islam being the central religion or the official religion, but it's often debated that the founder of Pakistan, Jinnah, was quite secular in nature, and I believe if you look at some of his speeches, then you would notice that he probably would have wanted a secular state, but that didn't turn out to be. It would eventually go that way, I hope. But apart from that, you don't see many secular countries in the Muslim world, and that is why you would see these sectarian conflicts. You would see within Islamic sects, you have different sects, and one is better than the other, and everyone says they're the best ones, and so on, and then we have a lot of violence in that. The moment you say that you want Islam for the world, you're basically saying that you want Islam to be the only force in town. You want Islam to be the only game in town. Whatever you do, you're a dhimmi, you're a minority, fine, but you have to live under our rule. No, the other people don't have to agree with that. I mean, how many other people are here? I would probably say maybe 50% of the people are probably not Muslims. But the interesting part here is that I have noticed, even in the democratic Muslim countries, even Muslims don't vote for the Islamist parties. We recently held elections in Pakistan, and again, as expected, the Islamist parties didn't get more than 6-7% of the votes, which is quite common. And these Islamist parties are not hardcore Islamists like you would see ISIS or Taliban. They're not saying that we're going to be beheading people, or we'll be throwing homosexuals off the rooftops, or we will be stoning adulterers to death. These guys are pretty mild. They believe in some sort of democratic principle. But even then, they don't get voted in. What does that tell you? It tells you that 95% of the Pakistanis, even they don't want Islam in the sense that how it was presented to us 1400 years ago. And Islam has been evolving ever since, very slowly though, but it has been evolving, which is a good thing. But we have people within the Islamic world who want to take us back to Islam that was 1400 years ago. Now that is a scary thought, not just for non-Muslims, but also for the Muslims, because they don't vote them in. And if you ask people who run away from the ISIS-controlled territories or from Taliban-controlled territories, a lot of people run away from them because of the brutality. Now these are just Homo sapiens as well. You might doubt that, but that usually is the case. They think they have the same brain as the rest of us, but they are still stuck between deciding whether they should have a theocratic state or a secular state. And the personal problem that I have with Islam is basically an enemy of progress. I mean, just name one thing, one aspect in your life which hasn't had any kind of conflict with Islam. One of these are women's rights, rights of homosexuals, rights of apostates, dissidents, whoever you look at. You would have some sort of an opposition from Islam, or at least from the doctrine of Islam. Something as simple as animals as well. I mean, in this day and age we are growing and we're seeing how we're becoming more and more conscious of the animal welfare. We want to treat animals nicely, but forget about it. You might think that, okay, well, you would find certain hadiths where the Prophet Muhammad told us to be kind to animals, but there are a lot of contradictions in Islam if you look at it. And this is what we see over and over again. Verses are quoted when it suits your agenda. We see hadiths when it suits your agenda, and then you ignore the other ones. I'm sure we'll get into those. Uthman will probably press me on those verses at some point. I just thought of one where you often hear this: if you kill a human, it's as though you've killed all humanity. I mean, it seems like a very peaceful verse. It's a very nice verse. But if you actually look at it, and if you understand the tafsir of it, if you actually read it word by word in the Quran, it actually says, except, which you usually don't hear, except they are corruptors. Now, I could be a corrupter. I am talking, I'm saying there's no God, there's no Allah, there's no creator of any universe, etc. But I could be a corrupter too, so it's okay to kill me. You can't behead me, or I don't know what's the favorite form or method for killing an apostate like me. But either way, I would be dead. Now, so how much time do I have? Okay, well, I'll try to wrap it up. Now, if you want an Islamic form of government, I mean, you have to look at Quran first, and then the Hadith, and also the Seerah of Muhammad. If we had Uthman's dream come true, the Islamic Republic of Australia, where Sharia law is enforced, it will be a very different Australia, and most of you might imagine, but you actually wouldn't imagine unless you actually put a face to that. Just imagine you can have 1, 2, 3, or 4 wives. You can beat them if they're disobedient. You can add unlimited number of sex slaves in that. You can round up homosexuals. I don't know how many homosexuals would be in this room, or maybe in this university. You can round them up maybe once a week, depending on how bad or how spread out this virus of homosexuality is instilled in this Western country. You can round them up, take them to the Westfield Tower or the Sydney Tower, whatever you guys call it, once a week maybe, and take them to the top, push them, throw them to their deaths. You can make Christians or Jews pay jizya, the non-Muslim tax. And there is a debate how much that tax should be, but we have got hadiths where it has been quite different from the normal tax that we see for Muslims to pay. I'm sure there are all types of reasons to defend those kind of taxes. You can be stoned to death for simply falling in love with someone. We have, and if you think that it's only going to happen, the sword is or the stones are only going to fall on a Muslim adulterer, then you're wrong. Even if you're Christian or Jew, you might still get stoned to death in the Islamic Republic of Australia, because apparently the punishment for adultery in Judaism is also stoned to death. And any of you who actually like dogs, well, yeah, they might have to be killed as well. If you like to cuddle them, then say goodbye to them. Say goodbye to animal rights activists. You're going to have. We just had a couple of days ago. We had a Eid-ul-Adha that is celebrated in honor of Abraham, who was about to slaughter his own son, but a sheep magically appeared after God said, "Sorry, I was just playing a game with you, and you have passed." However, I would say he probably failed, actually, that he was about to slaughter his own son. And Muhammad didn't like dogs for some reason. He loved cats, and he did say all dogs must be killed. And as we often see, how he contradicts himself, and then his commands get changed. And he went from kill all dogs to, okay, the non-essential dogs, and then he went to just the black dogs. I don't know what the logic behind just the black dogs is. Maybe I think it has some sort of a devil in it. But anyway, so this is why we would probably, I think it would be in the best interest of everyone, even the Muslims, that we don't have a theocratic Islamic state. And I wouldn't want you to live in a militant atheist state either, but let's meet somewhere in the middle. Let's have a secular state. You can do whatever you want, but please let us do whatever we want as well. Let us live our lives in peace. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for taking your time out to take part in tonight's discussion or debate. I think these type of discussions have more to their credit and more interest than people tend to know or tend to give them. And I think they're quite beneficial for all parties involved, so long as they're done in the right spirit, which I think is a spirit of rigor. You're still going to be rigorous, and you got to have thick skin, but still respectful, I think. So we'll see how we'll go tonight. Now, okay, what's that? Imagine, I'm going to come back to, I'm not going to respond to Harris right now, as in, I'm not saying it's not worth responding, but in the later parts of the night. Imagine someone like this coming up to you, disheveled hair, unkempt, a bit ragged, and waving their finger in your face and saying, you're untidy, your clothes aren't neat, fix yourself up. How would you respond? You'd probably do one of these. Because, and not only that, you were sort of, you thought you were tidy. So you do one of these, and then you probably look for a mirror to try and put it in front of the person and say, well, are you okay? You're not sure you're not smoking anything. Now, why do I raise that? How's that relevant? The general atheist charge, the modern, the very contemporary, militant atheist charge, Dawkins et al., is that religious belief is mythical, it's unsubstantiated, and it's based on blind faith. I'm going to argue and try to show that in fact it's the exact opposite, and therefore what religious people, theists of all varieties, need to do is just look for the nearest mirror and put it to their atheist friends. I.e., what I'm going to argue is that in fact the atheist worldview is rather mythical, unsubstantiated, and based on blind faith. Now, we say in English, don't miss the forest for the trees, which is to say that don't miss the bigger picture. So the way I want to make that case is by focusing on fundamentals. There's a lot of particulars that can be spoken about. The internet's full of them. You can Google if you like. You saw that Harris threw out a number of different things. If you start responding to them, we wouldn't get anywhere. I think the fundamentals are much more important. That's where the bigger picture, that's where my focus will be. Now, I believe you can categorize most contemporary atheist contentions against religion into a few succinct types. A, there is no evidence for God or the supernatural. B, religion appeals to the fantastical or highly improbable. C, religious scripture condones immoral values and practices. D, religion is prone to violence and oppression. And E, well, why would God do X or why would he not do Y? This or that. In fact, I think most, if not all, atheist contentions come under one of these. But of course, bringing up that mirror, if we put the atheist worldview in the dock for a moment, I would argue that it will be found guilty on interrogation of, number one, failure to substantiate itself based on reason. Number two, incoherence. Incoherency means its various premises don't gel logically with each other. And number three, of in fact advocating outlandish beliefs requiring much faith. Now, why do I use the word worldview? That's an important point. Harris just did it, and Dawkins et al., they all seem to do this, where it's like, oh, atheism is just a negation. You're the wise who are saying, we believe in God, you've got to prove it. We're just saying he's not. That's true, strictly speaking, but the whole issue of God only arises because there's broader questions that we all think about. Some think about, others debate about, right? Important questions. The answers to which form a worldview. Questions like, how do we acquire knowledge of the world? What exists in the world? What are its origins? What differentiates good from evil? How do we establish values, purpose and meaning in life? How do we organize society? And there's some more funky technical terminology in the square brackets. That's what I mean by a worldview. And this is very important. Einstein, writing a letter to Robert Thornton in December 1944, said, so many people today, and even professional scientists, seem to me like somebody who has seen thousands of trees but has never seen a forest. A knowledge of the historic and philosophical background gives that kind of independence from prejudices of his generation, from which most scientists are suffering. This independence created by philosophical insight is, in my opinion, mark of distinction between a mere artisan, a craftsman, or specialist, and a real seeker of truth. So with that premise in mind, which is that the fundamentals, the foundations, the background, the big questions are very important, I would suggest that the atheist worldview looks something like this. It's scientist, not scientific, scientist in its epistemology. It's naturalist in its ontology. Its cosmology is to suggest that the universe came from nothing or that it was always there. It's secularist in its politics. And its ethics is sort of in fact, we'll talk about this, sort of an enforceable objective morality, and it argues that values and meanings are subjective. What does that mean in more simple terms? We can again summarize it. We can summarize the atheist worldview in, I think, 6 propositions that I have here. Number one, science is the only way to ascertain truth. Number 2, the natural material world is all that exists. Number 3, the universe came from nothing, which is more popular these days, but others also argue that it was always there, it's eternal. 4, morals evolved and we just know them and we're obliged by them. And number 5, we make our own purpose and meaning in life. And number 6, religion must be relegated to the private realm. Now, I'd like to talk about all of these, but time limitations mean I'm going to have to focus on some to the exclusion of others. I actually was intending not to touch on the last one, which is rather easy to critique. I was going to focus on 2 or 3 of the top ones, but Harris has started out with a focus on secularism, so we might talk about that. Secularism is actually my area of speciality. I did a master's thesis on secularism, and now I'm 1 year into a PhD on secularism, so we can talk about that certainly. Now, but the point is what? So those are the propositions, right? That's what, and I'm happy for Harris to correct me on any of those as key pillars of the atheist creed, if you will. Now, of course, from a critique perspective, what I would say is that number 1 is a question of substantiation. How do you substantiate those? What is the evidence for scientism? The belief that science is the only means to truth. That proposition is actually self-refuting. You can't prove scientifically that science is the only way to ascertain truth. It's not. It's something that philosophers wouldn't even take seriously because it refutes itself. Naturalism likewise. What is the evidence to suggest that all that exists is material? In fact, naturalism is a bit like this in modern sort of internet terminology. Pictures that it didn't happen, right? But we all know deep down that that's just because there's no pictures, it didn't happen, right? Obviously, I can say I see a bottle here, here's a bottle of water, but just because I can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. It needs to be substantiated. That's not the point. It's not that you can just claim anything. But to start off on the premise and say, if I can't see it or touch it or smell it, it's not there, you can't substantiate that. It's without evidence, that premise, that position. Likewise, what is the evidence to suggest that there's an eternal universe or a universe popped out of nothing? The first one's logically impossible, the second one's sort of absurd, although now we have people like Lawrence Krauss who have just redefined the term nothing in order to make it work, and we can talk about that. And again, what is the evidence for moral obligation? By moral obligation, I mean this idea that there are moral values, objective moral values, that we can then, again, wave fingers at others and say, you can't do that. All right, and there was a lot of waving of fingers there, moral fingers by Harris in his first talk about Islam does this and it does that and all sorts of stuff. That, as a matter of fact, assumes the existence of objective moral values and moral obligation. But what's the evidence for that? You find that the atheist worldview cannot present any such evidence, or at least I challenge my interlocutor tonight to bring it forth. Of course, you also have, so there's things that there's no evidence for, and then it's like some things you just make them up. So you hear all the time, I don't need God for life to have purpose or meaning, I can make up my own. Sure you can, but that's what a myth is, something you make up, right? It's, any invented story, idea or concept, an imaginary fictitious thing, person is a myth. So if you do make up, sure you can, that's the point, that's mythical. And so the point is, you find you can do that, like in your spare time, but don't then turn around and accuse others of saying you believe in myths, as if you're saying something meaningful, as if it's a meaningful critique. And of course then, at third level, there are outlandish, by outlandish I mean highly, highly fantastical, improbable beliefs. Again, things just coming out of nothing, which is magic, right? Multiverse theories that don't have a shred of evidence, not a shred. And so in physics you can postulate them to do science, but from an atheist perspective, they should not even enter the discussion because they've got no evidence whatsoever to them. They're mere hypotheses. Likewise, the fact that our very, very fine-tuned universe, which has now been very strongly confirmed by astrophysics and modern science, is suggested that it's just by chance. well, it's difficult by chance, but what you do is you postulate multiverse and then you make it sort of more probable. But in the end, it's just saying that it's entirely by chance. On that, Sir Martin Rees, who's an atheist, by the way, but a very reputable and renowned cosmologist and astrophysicist, he said that wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. What I mean by that, to give you some examples, is a very good book he wrote. You can check out just 6 numbers. For instance, our universe is spatially 3-dimensional. If it were 2 or 4, life would not exist. If the gravitational constant, and these are just some examples, varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60 parts, we would not exist. 1 to the 10 in 60 is 0.601. If the cosmological constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 120 parts, we wouldn't exist, and so on and so forth. The point is that these constants have shown, modern physics has shown, that the universe is almost like it's balanced on a razor edge with respect to first of all, the formation of galaxies and stars and life-supporting planets like Earth, and then for the actual formation of life itself. And so to just say, well, happened by chance, if that's not outlandish, then I don't know what is. This is some illustration of what we're talking about in numbers. The third one you can't put on a screen. There was another one down there, but I didn't read it. That's how highly improbable it is. I might come back to this. I actually had a history of the world to show how outlandish it can become. In the beginning there was nothing, like I've got a whole few paragraphs. I might come back to this. Of course, part of this is, in the end, what it amounts to, that cosmological narrative, and Harris, I think, has said this on Public Record elsewhere, is that human beings, the world is an accident. Right? It's accidental byproducts of time, matter and chance. We've evolved relatively recently on an infinitesimal speck of dust lost somewhere in a hostile, mindless universe, doomed to eventually perish. Right? We don't come from anywhere in particular, not here for any particular reasons. You make them up, obviously, but we're not going anywhere either. That's the narrative, right? Fine. But in all of that, where do you pull out moral obligation from? Where do you pull out objective moral values from? It's like, you haven't come from anywhere, not really going anywhere, end up nothing, but be good while you're here. And if you don't be good, then I'm going to wave my finger at you for not being like. You'd probably really, the coherent, logical thing would be to say, do what you want. Like, you're worthless, like no different than you and the cockroaches. I'm sure cockroaches are not having conferences about moral obligations and debates of this nature, but maybe, I don't know. But do you see the point about coherence? There's no coherence here. You're actually inserting objective values and obligations and morality, because otherwise it wouldn't work. Life wouldn't work. Right? It'd be a nightmare. You need them, so you put them in. But again, that's just now being mythical. That's 15 minutes. I'll stop there, just as I reach Richard Dawkins. But maybe we can continue in this afterwards.
But this is exactly why I didn't want to go into this does God exist argument or not, because there's nothing new. I don't know how many of you have actually heard these arguments. It's exactly the same mantra we hear over and over again. But I've been dragged into it, so I guess I have 10 minutes to fill. So you said, you pointed out some parts of atheism, the atheistic narrative, that we have naturalistic way, we have scientism, naturalism, all these isms that we follow. What is the evidence for scientism? It's a fair question. Is scientism the only way to understand the universe that we have? I would say yes. How long has it been? How long has it been that we've been trying to understand the universe, the planet, what happened in the past, archaeology, whatever we try to understand, we only have science to answer those questions. What is the evidence for it? Science doesn't prove that science exists. I'm not sure if that question actually makes sense, because what alternative do we have? Do we have another alternative? The alternative that we're given from the other side usually is, well, there is a book that tells you how everything formed. It took 6 days for Earth to form. There was a man created and then a woman created from his rib. And that's it. This is an objective truth. You have to believe in it. This is the evidence. Because it's the book. And that's it. There's nothing else. So that is the alternative that we're given from the other side. You want to believe in that? Fine. Believe in that. And go with that and live the rest of your life with that. But it's not convincing for many of the world's population. You said atheists say, well, we make up our own morality. I think you do too. I mean, morality has been evolving as far as we can go back in the human history. I mean, we no longer own slaves. Even in the Islamic world we don't. Even though slavery remained an essential part of Islamic form of life. And it's no coincidence that Saudi Arabia, or probably it was Yemen, I think, it was one or the second last, it was last or the second last country to abolish slavery. But it didn't do it out of its free will. The world had gone past slavery. The world's morality was evolving. And Islam, or the Islamic world, had to catch up with that as well. So your morality evolved. I mean, in my country, but Pakistan, again, it's not as Islamic as some of the other Islamic countries, like you say, probably Saudi Arabia. I mean, polygamy is another thing which is perfectly fine. But we don't have a culture of having multiple wives. I mean, it's still something that is frowned upon. We don't have a culture of beating up your disobedient wife. I mean, there is a lot of domestic violence in Pakistan, and I'm sure it exists in the Western countries as well, but at least you get punished for that. At least you don't proudly say that, yes, today my wife didn't cook me dinner on time, so I gave her a left hand. You don't say that proudly, or you wouldn't say that in any way. But it's perfectly acceptable in the objective book, the book full of objective truths, the Quran. The Old Testament is probably just as bad. So that is where we actually say that we do use reason, logic, to come up with better morality. We don't think that it's okay to own sex slaves, but ISIS thinks it's okay. It's okay to raid your neighboring village, kill them, and take up their wives, to take up the girls and use them as your sex slaves. I mean, I'm interested in the fine-tuning argument. I mean, it seems to me, again, like apologists always use that argument as though it's some sort of an evidence. I mean, you quoted scientists where your position came in line with that. I mean, there are a great deal of many scientists. I mean, there's a common phrase that goes around, many scientists, that, and by the way, I'm obviously not a scientist, and I am reluctant to touch that topic. I learn my science from science popularizers. And I think you would probably get your science from them too. I mean, otherwise you would have been doing a PhD in physics. Again, I'm not discrediting your credentials. I'm sure you're doing great work, and I wish you best of luck in your PhD. But there are what scientists tell us, that science tells us that we have never imagined before. That is the exciting part of science. I mean, when I don't understand quantum physics to the extent that a quantum physicist would understand, but I still can't get my head around how can an electron be at two places at the same time. It just doesn't make sense. And that is what science is all about. We can't even imagine the world of the universe. It's too complicated for us until some brilliant scientist comes forward and shows us that how wrong our common senses are and how easily we can be fooled. So with the fine-tuning argument, it's a very common argument. A lot of scientists say, well, we don't know how the universe would have been if any of the constants that you talked about, if any of those constants were slightly different, if the gravitational force of the gravitational constant was slightly different. We don't know. We would have had We may not have had any universe, the kind of universe we have. But again, multiverse, you say that there's no evidence for it. Fine, I'm okay with that. Maybe there is no multiverse, but maybe there is. Maybe there are other multiverses with different constants. We don't know that. We don't know what kind of life exists on those universes, and whether most universes are compatible with life or not. Just like we see around this huge universe, most of the universe is very dangerous. I mean, it doesn't look like that we could have life on other planets. We've got 8 other planets. I mean, it seems like, again, the alternative we get, I mean, these are interesting questions for us to ponder upon. But the alternative we get is very simplistic way that there was a God, he was getting bored, he created a universe with a Big Bang, he waited 14 billion years, and then he got bored again. He thought, okay, I've got to do something. And then he waited 9 billion years and created a solar system, waited another 3.5 billion years, created some simple multicellular organisms, and then waited again. And then dinosaurs came another 250 million years later. And then T-Rex comes in, and then dinosaurs kill each other for another 200 million years, and then he hits the Earth with an asteroid. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, what was going on? I know you would give your point, what your philosophy says about how the time scale of God might be different. But you can't have it both ways. You cannot say that the God's time frame could be really short. So 14 billion years, that is 14 billion for humans, may not have been 14 billion for God. But then now he's got, it's like a remote control he's got now. He's watching the world in slow motion, because if its time is really slowed down. So I'll wrap it up very quickly. But I think the arguments that you made, it's probably better if you actually come up with the alternative, so people can actually understand that, as complicated as these arguments might be, as you may not like these points. But let's hear the alternatives. What do you have on the offer?
Okay, thank you. The thing is, I don't think I'm the one who has an extra onus of having an alternative. The point is, if I have a case, I need to substantiate it. The opponent has a case, needs to substantiate it. And so if I keep going back and saying, what's your alternative, I am delegating or relegating my task to substantiate. So I'll definitely come, time permitting, to substantiate the position. I didn't try to prove the existence of God in my first presentation, 15 minutes. I'm happy to come to that. But the point is, it's a separate question. The substantiation of theism is a separate question to the substantiation of atheism or the atheist narrative. I asked, what is the evidence for scientism? Harris sort of said, well, what's the alternative? But that's not evidence, right? And then if you don't have evidence, you say, well, we don't have evidence, but that's the best we got without evidence, fine. But then that means something. This is the point. That means you've got to stop waving your fingers at others for not having evidence, because you allow it for yourself, right? Now, having said that, the alternative to scientism is not some book. The alternative to the idea that science is the only way to know truth is that there are other ways to know truth, right? Like logic, like conceptual analysis, like testimony, right? Other forms of epistemic forms by which we know things that don't apply the scientific method, and which are equally important, equally strongly held. So, and that's the point. Moral facts, moral positions, murder is wrong. You don't come to that realization by some scientific experiment, right? It's not based on science. So if you say science is the only way to know truth, then you can't also, this is where, again, incoherence, you can't also be saying murder is wrong and that's wrong and this is right and this is moral and that's not moral, right? Because you couldn't prove that scientifically. So that's where the problem is. Now, having said something about morality again, I asked the question, what's the basis on the atheist worldview of objective moral values, moral duty? And Harris sort of said it evolved, morality evolved. Let's take, for argument's sake, that morality evolved like everything else, right? On the view of evolution by natural selection, everything to do with biological organisms evolved. But there's a big difference between, again, moral propositions and everything else. We have tastes, right? People like pineapple on their pizza, others don't. It's a massive issue of controversy the world over, right? But no one goes around, except when they're like really bored and trying to be funny, actually making an issue of people not, getting rid of the pineapple and wasting it. But so the point is, those sort of tastes, subjective tastes, are not like moral values. There's no obligation, there's no duty, right? Here, when you say so-and-so was such a bad person, Hitler, Napoleon, Stalin, whoever, right? Religious or non-religious, when you say that, you're assuming moral obligation, you're assuming objective moral values. They have to have some basis, right? In the theist worldview, they have a basis. God is the basis, right? Whether it's true or not is a separate question, because this is a question of coherence. On the atheist worldview, it is incoherent to act as if there are objective moral values, because you don't have anything. You just have you have evolution of cold, hard, immaterial chemicals and some physical stuff, the reality of which we don't know, had led to what we have today. But you don't have values or meaning. You make them up, but then you can't go around accusing people of doing the wrong thing. I don't like pineapple on the pizza, by the way. Now, fine-tuning, I might go back to my slide here because this is Dawkins, is the original dude. Again, just to be clear, I didn't use the fine-tuning argument, so I would appreciate if my interlocutor didn't sort of hear buzzwords and then bring out the old trope. I didn't find the fine-tuning argument is an argument for the existence of God. I didn't make any arguments for the existence of God in my thing. What I said was that there is fine-tuning in the universe, and the atheist says it's by chance. That's outlandish. That was my proposition. So if you want to say something about that, that would be more interesting than to introduce a straw man. Richard Dawkins says that in his book, The God Delusion, he says that creationist logic is always the same. Some natural phenomenon is too statistically improbable, too complex, too beautiful, too awe-inspiring to have come into existence by chance. Design is the only alternative to chance that the authors can imagine, therefore a designer must have done it. And science's answer to this faulty logic is always the same. Design is not the only alternative to chance. Natural selection is a better alternative. Indeed, design is not a real alternative at all, because it raises an even bigger question. Then it solves who designed the designer. So Dawkins is making 2 points. Number one, that science's answer to faulty creationist logic is that design is not the only alternative. There's another one. And in fact, design can't be an alternative because it raises another question. He actually says the same thing. This is a very important part of his book. He calls this his central argument. You can read it on page 157, 158 in The God Delusion. And I paraphrase the argument here, which this is one he calls the central argument, that the natural human temptation to attribute the appearance of design in the universe to actual design is wrong, because the designer hypothesis raises a large problem: who designed the designer. Now, none of that is logical. I'm sorry. First of all, it's not science's answer that design is not the only alternative to chance. That has nothing to do with science. It's just a logical argument, right? Like, which part of science is that? Is that physics? Is that chemistry? Is that biology? That's not science. You just made a logical argument. More importantly, his main point in all this is this here, the one I've boldened, that you can't conclude a designer from design. Why? And he agrees that it's the natural human temptation. It's natural, but you can't do it. Why? Because it raises a bigger question. That makes no sense whatsoever. He's saying you can't assert an explanation that asks for a further explanation. If we agree with that thinking, that I cannot offer an explanation because it's going to raise another question, or no, not that, because that explanation calls out for another one, we can never offer explanations, because you're always going to say, well, what's the explanation for that explanation? What about that? Like kids, say, why, mum, why this? Well, but why that? Well, but why that? Every explanation is going to call for an explanation, right? That's the logical critique of this. But to use a very simple example, all the time, an archaeologist doing his thing, finds certain remnants that humans usually use, digs them up and infers that there was an old human civilization here. Dawkins comes along and says, well, that raises the question of who they were and what were they doing. Therefore, we can't take explanation because you can't explain something further about the... That's stupid. That's ridiculous. We take what we know based on the evidence. If other interesting questions arise, we can look at them. In fact, that's what happened in science. Science would not work if you asked for an explanation for every explanation, because then you would be into an infinite regress of explanations. Right? So you see, it's just a sleight of hand. He hasn't made an argument. He hasn't made an argument that would survive the scrutiny of logic, just plain simple logic. It's a sleight of hand that he and Krauss and all the horsemen seem to do quite regularly. And then he goes on to appeal to multiverse theories that, again, I emphasize, don't have a shred of evidence whatsoever. They're postulates, and you can postulate things in science, but again, if it's about things having evidence before you affirm them, you cannot bring that into the picture. You can say, I don't know, it could be this, but you can't bring that in to get you out of a hole, because there's no evidence whatsoever for that. You're just hypothesizing. So this is the point, that there is no evidence for each and every major pillar of the atheist narrative. Nothing. And again, I challenge Harris to speak to his alternative and substantiate the point. I've got 45 seconds. I want to talk about secularism, but because that's where he started from in his issue talk, but I'll come back to that later because it requires a bit more than what is now 3 seconds to talk about. But so maybe I'll give away for free lunch, 30 seconds. And I have got a proving Islam slide, so I do want to eventually get to that.
I'm happy you actually have that next slide, because I was more interested in seeing that. It's I was thinking maybe you don't want to give any alternative. You said, I want to have a little bit of free conversation, just so I understand where you are. You said morality works on logic, not on science. Is that what your point was?
I said morality is not affirmed based on science.
Yeah.
It's not established based on science.
Yeah, so the alternative you were saying, I mean, we have, for example, logic as well.
Not for morality. Generally speaking, not for morality.
Okay.
The way we know truth in the world, different aspects of the world, there's other things than science, logic, consensual analysis, testimony.
Okay. The logic is used a lot, and it's a good thing, and I would hope that a lot of more people would use logic. But logic actually fails about things that we don't understand. Logic only comes into the picture when we have understood, when we have experimented about something, when we have followed the standard empirical evidence and reputation, demonstration, passed the falsifiability test. We've done all of that, and that's when we establish our logic. I mean, before Newton, we couldn't work out why things fall. He had to explain it, but we did kind of know that, okay, well, logic says whatever you throw up in the air, it would eventually fall down on Earth. But then you know that there's an escape velocity of this planet. So if you go beyond a certain speed, you can throw something up in the sky that may never come back. So the logic failed there. So the logic only works when we have understood something. And I can't work out, again, if there's any other alternative that would help us understand logic. So science helps us to understand logic as well. Again, the other example is how can one electron be at the two places at the same time? Defies logic. I think Dawkins wrote that book in 2005. As far as I understand him, he's actually become a little bit more. He's probably changed his position a little bit on that on that point. he actually is sympathetic towards the idea and probably more open to the alternatives in terms of, or not showing arrogance that, okay, well, this is it, that's the other alternative. Yes, he's firm on that the alternative that we get, because alternatives matter. We want to know that what other alternative you're giving. And if it sounds something that is just full of wishy-washy explanations, that this is what we were told and this is the alternative, and that's why it is important. I know you probably would now explain, you would go into Islam, which a lot of us are actually interested in. There's an anthropic principle, for instance, where we are here. That is the evidence that whatever we have, whatever constants were good for life. That is another explanation. You said that him asking for an explanation after an explanation is somehow, what do you say, that it's not a good position to take or a logical position to take? Asking explanation for an explanation?
No, negating the explanation because you haven't got a...
No, okay. Well, I don't think he's actually negating the explanation. He's saying, okay, the explanation that you're giving demands another explanation. And that's why scientists don't like to go in the realm of, okay, well, this is an absolute truth. Whatever explanation you give, you might have heard a lot of people say, a lot of scientists say that we answer one question and then we have now another 100 questions to answer. You can say, well, why do we have day and night? Well, it's not because the sun that goes around the earth, it's actually earth that spins around its axis. Okay, so if you ask a question, earth does spin around its axis, so that is an absolute truth as far as that part is concerned. But if you change the question that, is that the only reason that we have day and night? Then you would say, no, we cannot answer that question in absolute terms, because maybe there might be a black hole that is affecting the rotation of Earth's axis, around its axis. So asking an explanation on top of an explanation is not the same as saying, well, we're negating the previous explanation that you've given. But what you want us to do is, well, you've given us an explanation and that's it. We just have to just stop there and just take it on good faith, and let's stop the human progress. Let's stop trying to find the answers any further. If we adopted that, we would have never flown, we would have never driven cars, we still would have been traveling donkey carts and just jumping off high building with big, large bird feathers and expecting that if you shake them we might fly. It would have never worked where we are today. So I don't think that your categorization of Dawkins, that him asking for an explanation on top of a faulty explanation, is kind of like negating it. That's just how science works. I think we didn't go into morality, so, yes, so there are a few people who actually say science does give us morality. I mean, why murder is wrong. I mean, is that really that tough a question to answer? I mean, science tells us that if you have more humans, our humanity will keep growing, we'll have more humans, obviously we'll keep reproducing, and then it works out. I mean, it's the survival of the fittest. I mean, the human species will survive. And the other way of looking at it, that murder would cause suffering to the victim and the family of the victim, which is not necessarily a good position to be in. It doesn't need Aristotle to come here and tell us that, well, it is a bad thing for anyone, and this is why no animal would want to die. There are some exceptions in black widow spiders and everything, but again, that goes into the survival of the species. And a male spider would, to propagate or to continue its species, it would actually sacrifice its own life. But suffering, science can tell us that what suffering is, what pain is. Obviously, there's a lot of work going on in the neuroscience. We can tell that being in pain is not an ideal position to be in. So, again, we don't need someone to tell us that, well, murder is wrong because God told us it's wrong. I think it's a pretty simple question. We can work it out. You talked about, I think you gave a watermelon analogy or whatever fruit that was, or you could throw it in and say, well, you're under no obligation. Well, you can be under an obligation. You can think that we have other humans who might be suffering with lack of food, and if that watermelon is better served to those suffering humans rather than just putting it in trash cans. So again, I mean, the suffering or avoiding the suffering, it is very basic science, and I'll give you that. I mean, it's not that hard to work it out. So yes, and there are a lot of people who believe, and I still kind of find this this notion very interesting, that science does have a lot to say or does have a lot of say in morality, right, and how morality evolves. Okay, all right. Well, I'll wrap it up, and then I'm actually keen to see what you have to say on Islam.
So I'm keen to do it as well, although if I might just go back to the slide just before it to confirm that, because Harris sort of said I'm misreading Dawkins, he's not negating the explanation. He literally says, and you can, again, the page numbers there, you can go back and check that.
I'm aware of this page.
The actual, what he's actually saying, that us attributing appearance of design to design is wrong because it raises another question. So he's negating an explanation, the explanation being that design means a designer, saying that's wrong. Why? Because then we have another question to answer: who designed the designer? So we can maybe talk about that in the cross-examination, but it is very much a negation of the explanation. Now, I also wanted to say a little bit about morality and watermelons and pineapples, and secularism, but let me do this first. Although I fear once I open this, then we're not going to come out of this, and I sort of let Harris off. But I do want to note he hasn't substantiated any one of the pillars of the atheist worldview, not one, except saying, well, what are the alternatives? Which, fine, we can recognise that, but it doesn't mean you. Now, so let me leave atheism completely aside, because I think it's only fair when you want to substantiate your own case, you can't keep sort of going, what's the alternative, what's this, what's that. And that's what I think should be separate. You can do it first or second, but you establish and critique, but you do them separately, although there were many premises that were overlap. Now, proving Islam, now I want to start off by saying people don't act 100% based on cold hard intellectual arguments, but they play a part. They play an important part, and we really don't have anything else to form the guide. But real life is more complicated than that. There's psychological issues, mental issues, and all sorts of stuff that come into play. But the intellectual argument for Islam rests on two premises, two issues. One is proving the existence of a creator, and then number two, what differentiates Islam from obviously other theistic or other religions who believe in God as well, or believe in a creator, is proving that the Quran is revelation from the creator. Now, as to the first, I've only got about 8 minutes. We'll see how we go. I'm just going to put out the argument, and obviously we can talk about it and thresh it out the rest of the night. I will recommend something, because for those who are serious to read, on this point about the existence of the creator, there's a very good book published just last year by Edward Fesser called 5 Proofs for the Existence of God. I think it's readable, it's more accessible. There's many books, many people have written on this for hundreds of years, but I think it's a very good book that you can read. In any case, the existence of a creator is actually quite simple for me. There are many arguments, but for me it's deduced from a very simple factual premise, observable premise, that contingent, finite, dependent, that the contingent, finite and dependent does not account for its own existence. Anything that's contingent, that's finite, that's dependent on other than itself, which is the properties of every single thing that we can sense, perceive around us, including ourselves, does not account for its own existence. Right? It calls out for an explanation of its existence. And if you think logically about its existence, there are only three possibilities, logical possibilities, as to what could account for its existence. One being an infinite series, that there's an infinite series. So one thing depends on another thing and another thing, and they all sort of, fulfill each other's dependencies and contingencies. Or two, they just pop out nothing, right? It's a logical possibility, but it's actually illogical. When I say logical, it means like anything we could think of to put down. But number two is absurd. It's if you're going to accept that, you can accept anything, all right? And it's I know there's lunch class and few people with him, but everyone else still believes that nothing in the English language is a universal negation. That means not anything, and things can't just pop out of absolute nothingness. And number three is that these things, the ground of their existence is a necessary being. Now that's not random. Why does it have to be necessary? Because otherwise it's number one. This is the only three possibilities. It's either other contingent things, or they have to be necessary. Necessity is the opposite of contingency. Contingency means it can be other than it actually is, right? Or the other way of saying that would be dependent things are caused by an independent thing. And the reason you have to go with the opposite attribute is because that's the only way you get out of an infinite regress. Obviously it makes intuitive sense, right? Like design makes intuitive sense, as Dawkins agrees, the natural human temptation to ascribe it to a designer. So too, dependent, contingent, finite beings require a necessary being. Here note that I'm not starting off some universal premise. I'm not saying everything that exists has a cause, or everything that begins to exist has a cause, and the rest of it. I'm being very particular. You start from what you can observe, and you think about the properties of that which you can observe, and how you may account for their existence. And I'm suggesting there's only three ways, and the first two don't work. And the reason infinite regress doesn't work, okay, yeah, one's enough. The reason an infinite series doesn't work is because you wouldn't have anything, nothing would exist. If the dependency goes back to a past into eternity, it's like a series of dominoes. Now obviously this domino here, if we think about this as the one that's right at the front right now, it's only going to fall if this one falls, right? And that's only going to fall, that one falls, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. But if you have an infinite series, what happens? Nothing happens. It doesn't fall, right? And the point's very, very simple. Any series of temporal contingent beings cannot be accounted for with a past that's infinite, right? Think of it if you think of it in more intuitive or concrete terms. Any individual. Harris was born. His parents before him there was a causal relationship there in terms of his birth, but likewise for them, and likewise for them, and likewise for them. Now, the howness of that explanation does make a difference. Whether you believe in evolution, humans evolved or they didn't evolve, that doesn't make a difference. The point is, the series goes on, and the point is that if it doesn't stop, Harris doesn't exist. That's fairly intuitive, very logical, right? But he does exist, whether we like or not. No, I'm joking. No, he's a good bloke. He exists. We exist. Contingent things exist. Therefore, it can't be an infinite series. And we already said, well, it can't be something from nothing that's like this right here, doing his rabbit trick. And so therefore, that proves the existence, the necessary existence of a necessary being. Now again, here the tropes will come out necessarily. Well, you said you can't have eternity, but then God becomes eternal and this and that. No. I didn't start from any universal premise. You said that everything that exists has a cause. Well, what's the cause of God? He exists. I didn't say that. So I do ask for careful consideration, since particularly Harris asked very kindly that I put out the alternative. I asked for careful consideration of what exactly I said and a response to what I said. We observe things, they have certain properties. These properties imply the existence of a necessary, independent, non-finite, as in without having imposed limitations, being, which in English we call God. That's that's the basic premise there now. I've got 2 minutes. The Quran as revelation, again, the Quran's revelation is the intellectual argument, rests on a rational deduction of its authorship based on known facts. So again, you start with the known facts, right? Scientists love to do this, but this is not science, this is logic and conceptual analysis. You start from the known facts, the ones that we can agree on, and ask a question: who could the author be based on these facts? And you eliminate the ones that it cannot be, and you're left with one that it can be. Again, what are the logical possibilities? Some Arab, it's in Arabic, or Arabs group, the Prophet ﷺ, peace be upon him himself, or God, having proven God, right? Just bringing him out. What are those known facts? That it was brought to the world by Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the 7th century in Arabia. He was unlettered, without formal education. He had not produced a single page of text or a single verse, or had any training from any poets, who were aplenty in Arabia. They prided themselves on their linguistic prowess. Before this, his bringing this out, along with the message, led to a severe struggle with the authorities in Arabia, who fought him, accused him of all sorts of things, but not of producing the Quran, because they knew its level. What else do we know? It is the peak of eloquence as a literary Arabic text. Now here, there will be some distinction and some debates and whatnot. Happy to concede for this argument. Some people will argue that it's not the peak, it's this and that. But as a text of immense or of considerable eloquence, the scholars of Arabic, random on the street, scholars of Arabic, Muslim and Christian and otherwise, agree, and I've got a few statements we can probably come back to later because I'm out of time. But its eloquence is of a remarkable nature. Not only that, it's beyond the known, its literary form is beyond the known literary forms of the time. And it's evidently different to the style of the prophetic hadith, the way he spoke, right? And it formed the basis of the world civilization for centuries to come. I'm just going to stop there in the interest of not taking more time. Maybe I'll come back later and bring these premises together. But those are the known facts. And it's a question of going back and considering the options. But as I said, maybe we can do that later. I now look forward to Harris actually substantiating his side of the argument.
Everyone, can I get everyone seated, please? You have to start. Start the second one.
So 10 minutes I ask the answers and then the other way around?
Just basically 10-minute back and forth. Try to keep it to, I guess, under 90 seconds, seeing that we only have one mic. Might be good to stop each other talking over, but yeah, just try to keep it brief, 90 seconds. So do a couple back and forth. Alright everyone, so we're now going to go into a 10-minute cross-examination section of the event. 10 minutes is fairly brief, so we will try to keep this as brief and concise as possible. We have only one mic for today, so we're just basically going to pass back and forth, hopefully to mitigate a bit of cross-speak as well. So we're going to start and open with Uthman. What are yours?
I want to take the issues of morality and science further, and maybe then some issues to do with secularism. But I'll just start on morality. On the one hand, you say that science is the only way to ascertain the truth. And on the other hand, you affirm certain moral values, objective, I assume, such as, murder being wrong, murder of innocence, to be clear, being wrong. Can you substantiate scientifically that murder of innocence is wrong?
See, this is the word people get caught up with, this objective morality. I mean, I still don't understand what objective morality is. Does it have to come from somewhere outside, someone bigger than us who has to tell us what this is it and that's it, that's how it's going to remain? So in terms of murder, I mean, I just thought of it like if you have an alien being who's about to come and destroy the planet Earth, and only one Superman has power to actually stop that, and the only way to stop that is killing that alien, would that murder be considered wrong? Yeah, he's going to suffer. Well, when we have 8 billion people to suffer on the other hand. So what are we going to do? So that's why, I mean, this is why people like us, we don't like the word objective morality. I mean, morality evolves with time. And that's going to be a totally different question at that point when we do discover an alien. We don't even know if there's an alien. So we haven't thought about killing an alien would be akin to murder. We have animal rights people who are actually now thinking we shouldn't eat animals. That is akin to killing an animal. That's akin to murder. So that morality doesn't exist. Nobody gave two F's about that question not so long ago. On the other hand, this is why objective morality stops the progress. And whichever ideology you accept, it doesn't give you any time to move on. I don't know if you might have something to add, but I'll ask you a question as well on top. I mean, you made a point that Muhammad was an illiterate.
Just do one topic at a time.
Okay, all right.
We might allow for.
But we're going to have to stop at some point.
Yeah, one pass back and then.
You can ask me a question. I answer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the reason we use objective is because otherwise it's subjective. And subjective is a reference to the human subject, human consciousness. So if morality is subjective, I make it up. It's like a taste.
We
make it up.
We make it up.
Well, no, origin it's like, because I could disagree with you, you could disagree with Kay, and everyone can have their own opinions.
No, but we'll have to give reason. We're going to have logic. We can sit down. Fine. That's why we have parliaments.
No, you can disagree.
You can disagree, yes.
Right, so the point is, the reason it's a question of obligation is at what point can I say that you're wrong and you just have a different opinion to me?
Well, that's why we have democracy, so we actually decide in a parliament, or we form a system, whether that's a local tribe or whatever, that this is what we've agreed upon and this is what we're going to go on. And that is subjective. As I said, morality has been evolving constantly, and that's why it is subjective. There is no such thing as objective morality, otherwise you're left with throwing gays off the rooftops. That's what you're left with.
So there's no difference there between tastes and social norms and moral values?
Yeah, what's your point?
Yes or no? I'm asking a question. According to you, is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, there is a difference between the objective morality
In them being objective or subjective or, obligation. What's the difference? What's the difference between a social norm and or tastes and moral values?
Well, the social norms, again, is something that actually evolves with time. With our understanding, we work out, okay, well, this is normal. I gave you an alien example. Maybe after 10,000 years of war between aliens and humans, we might have to evolve at some point that, okay, well, aliens and humans have to coexist, but that would be a question to answer at that point. So that evolves, but if we are stuck with the objective morality, we would never be able to find a solution to that. It probably hasn't even been, wouldn't even be discussed, I think, from Islamic theology.
Why is suffering wrong?
No one wants to suffer.
So it's wrong because no one wants to do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to suffer. Would you like to suffer?
No, it doesn't make it wrong.
Well, it does make it wrong.
I don't like a lot of things. But
All right, we might move on to... I don't know if there are any threats there and would you like to suffer? All right, I might let Harris open up with a secondary topic. Did you have anything you want to cover? I might just keep the mic because it's not really doing anything. I feel comfortable with it.
Well, you said Muhammad was illiterate, and then you tried to mention, I think, something along the line that he wrote a really beautifully literary, he had great literal work. The Quran is beautiful. Were you kind of using that some sort of defense for Quran being some sort of a miraculous book?
No, I wasn't saying that. Obviously, I was trying to show why the Quran is revelation from God, not from Muhammad.
Yeah. So you're using Quran. But you're using Quran in literal sense.
So I'm saying the person who brought it to us materially in this world, the person who's the source as far as we're concerned, materially or objectively, was illiterate. The text itself is, from a literary perspective, of a very high nature.
Who says that?
Many people, many scholars say that. I've got a few quotes. But
again, like, I mean, you're saying that when I love it how you use a very high standard of evidence, which is a good thing, but you're not applying the same thing when it comes. No, you're not, because a lot of, for every person you would find who would say that, oh, it's a very beautiful piece of work, a lot of people would say it's not.
No, I don't mean in that sense. So, for example, let's use a comparison. English literature.
Yeah.
Obviously, every Joe Blow is going to have an opinion, but that doesn't matter. In origin, you're going to go to the academics, the specialist scholars of English,
right?
And they would tell you that there's Shakespeare and there's Keats and there's Wordsworth and there's this and that, and they will make some judgment. And there is an area there that's not scientific entirely, but different. Obviously, there's a big difference between going to them and going to.
Yeah, but would they be biased? I mean, is it fair to say that most?
Some will, some won't. That's why I said, obviously, people can say Muslim scholars are biased. Muslim scholars are Arabic, right? That's why I said, in fact, I had 2 or 3 quotes from non-Muslim scholars of Arabic who are saying the same thing. Right? And the premise is very simple, that it's a text of literary excellence.
But why do we see that a lot of Muslims then who are not the experts, they still run with the idea that, it is a beautiful
They believe
book.
that. That's a matter of belief. That's not a matter of scholarly.
No, but you have to believe in something that actually makes sense, right? Or you would see a problem. Okay, well, fair enough. You're saying that there might be scholarly consensus on that. But you would see the problem with the actual faith when you have 95% of world's Muslims would not understand Arabic, or actually probably maybe lower it down a little bit. I was thinking more of Indonesians and Pakistanis. But most people who would not understand Arabic, but they would still say, well, it's a beautiful piece of literature, it's beautiful for everyone. But even though they don't understand it, you see that as a problem?
I see it as a problem that more Muslims don't know Arabic, they don't appreciate it as it should be.
No, but they say they appreciate it. No, but they say they appreciate it.
No, they affirm a particular point. They don't say that we know Arabic and we know this and we know that. If you ask them, what's your basis of saying that it's this and that, they'll explain to you. I think there is a problem there. Obviously, Muslims aren't perfect. They've got all sorts of problems. But that's no different to any other people. Any other people, not only religious, even atheists, and you can take any particular scientific conclusion. In fact, there was a good video that went around, I don't know who did it, of a professor, or no, of a person, I don't know who it was, asking university graduates, science graduates, about whether they believed in evolution.
Yeah,
If
the
so-
banana man.
And if
Yeah.
so, why?
Yeah.
Most of them couldn't offer an answer.
Yeah, but there's
So what? What's that got to do with whether evolution is right or wrong? Right?
It was a pretty choppy video. I
That's
don't
not the
know.
point. The point is there are many atheists who believe in evolution, but if you ask them what's the evidence, they will say, well, there's some scientist somewhere who's got the evidence. True?
Yeah, but no, but that proposition of those scientists can actually be tested.
That's a different point.
But that is
Point.
but that relies on the basis of saying that, okay, well, why an evolutionary biologist says that or claims that, and then you can say, okay, it says that because it's
So
been.
why do you, well, we can test the evidence, we can talk about the evidence.
So in the
That's
terms
the
of the
point.
scholarly discussion of whether something is a beautiful piece of literature or
Yeah.
not, I'm trying to understand that how one can claim that it's a beautiful piece of work.
There are a number of ways. For example, as I said, the second point was literary forms. Literary texts have forms. What that means is, for instance, it can be poetic or it can be prose. It's two different forms. These are defined. Like if you actually study literature, these are defined forms. Then there are types of poetry. There are
Right.
types of prose. Right? And so you find the scholars of Arabic, Muslim and non-Muslim, have categorized the various types, the various literary forms of the Arabic language at the time of the Prophet. And they tell us that there was actually 16 poetic forms and a number of major forms in prose. And the literary form of the Quran is not in any of them.
So you're basically.
Alright, we might leave that one now to dig our heels in too hard.
Okay.
We might get one more question from you, Uthman, and then one more from Harris, and we might move on to the Q&A section.
All right. Okay, well, I might come to secularism now. You sort of painted secularism as this sort of, allows freedom for everyone and whatnot. My understanding is that secularism is, again, it's a negative proposition and a negation to say religion should be relegated to the private realm. But why should that be the case? Again, where's the substantiation here? Religion is religion, yes, some religion has been violent, so have religious people and ideologies. Religion seeks certain political influence, so do non-religious ideologies, communism, capitalism, liberalism. Why should religion be singled out to be relegated to the private realm?
Because first of all, I would lose my neck if we make it a theocratic state. If we say it's Islam, I would lose my neck. Would you agree?
So it's not you.
Sorry?
So it's all about you.
No, but I'm not. No,
It's about secularism and religion.
Yeah.
It doesn't discriminate between Islam.
No, but secular. Well, we're just talking about Islam, right? So I would say that you would want Christendom here, or you would want Islamic Sharia law in Australia. What would you want?
It's a different question.
No. I'm having a discussion with you. What would you like?
I would want Islam everywhere.
So what would happen to
Just
me?
as I think,
What would happen?
like secularism everywhere.
Sorry, say it again. Say it again.
Just as a communist or a liberal would like.
No, but we're not talking about communism. We're talking about secularism.
That's what I said. I would like Islam everywhere. That's a value proposition. It's not a sort of imposition program.
Yeah, but-
Just as a matter of values, you would like secularism everywhere.
No, but what?
Would you not?
But I want to know what would happen to me.
So what about you?
I am an
I
apostate.
don't know what would happen to you.
Yeah, what would happen to me?
Depends.
Depends on what? I am specifically asking a question. I don't understand why you're not giving a straight answer. What would happen to an apostate like me?
It assumes that this Islamic Republic, or Republic is a French
Yeah,
system.
okay. Just,
So I'm not too in favour of it, but it assumes that this caliphate, right?
yeah, okay.
It assumes that the caliphate's going to have some particular policy about Harris Sultan. I don't think so.
So they're going to make specific policy on Aristotle.
No, I said I don't think so. You're giving yourself too much
So
importance.
I am going to be. So you know what I mean by that. I am.
Tell me what you mean. You answer my question.
Well, I'm trying to have a conversation with you. I don't know why I don't get a straight answer. I am an apostate. I think it might have become clear by now. But so what would happen to me?
About the question.
What would happen to me if it's not a secular country, it's a theocratic Islamic state? What would happen to me for saying that I'm an apostate? I don't believe in Islam or Muhammad being the prophet. I held that view once, but I no longer hold that view. What would happen to that?
There's numerous possibilities about
Like what? I'm keen to. I'll be given a choice to go back to Islam or not.
No, it depends what you do. Depends how you go about it. Depends on what's applied at the time. But the whole point, it's not about if you want to focus on the Islamic position, we can do that without you can't with a scenario about what happens to you and make it all about yourself.
No, but
you can ask the question, why does Islam have this position?
Yeah, no. I'm not asking about why. I'm starting with what would happen to me.
I don't know what happened to you.
Do you really don't know what would happen in the past?
No, because you could do so many things.
So you've changed your position on that?
No, I haven't changed my position. No.
You have. So you have never said that under Islamic Sharia law, an apostate should be killed.
I don't say should. I've stated.
Or would be killed.
I've clarified the Islamic position on the matter.
Yeah. So why are you not saying it clearly now?
No, because I'm sure if logic is not your strong, there's a huge difference
so
between.
You certainly have fans here who
there's a huge difference between an Islamic position and what may or may not happen in any particular circumstance.
So what is the Islamic position on this issue?
If you want to, you know what it is.
Well, this is something.
I think Harris is trying to ask as...
I haven't even touched homosexuals or women, sex slaves.
So
as an adherent to Islam,
well, yeah, that's fine.
Do you share the Islamic position?
As a Muslim, do you share the Islamic position? Yes.
Right.
As an adherent of communism, do you share this particular communist precept?
I'm actually...
Is that even a question?
Yeah. What's wrong with that question? What?
Because it assumes that,
Assumes what?
It assumes that there should be some sort of gap between a person who defines himself by a particular view and the position there.
I didn't mean to put you on a position because I think a lot of people know what your position on that is.
Okay, now I've answered. Can you answer the original question?
Yes. So
why does
this is why.
Single out religion?
This is why because people like me or so many other people of other denominations are going to be suffering, which we have already established. Suffering is not a good thing.
So under communism, people don't suffer?
I'm not proposing communism.
But the question was, why single out religion? Why not say, all oppressive ideologies should be relegated to the private realm?
Yeah, sure. I'm okay with that.
No, but that's not what you believe. You believe in secularism.
Yeah, because I am comparing that with religion. What's the topic of the discussion? Islam or atheism, right?
Okay.
It wasn't communism or atheism or communism or Islam,
right?
Was it? Was that the topic of the discussion? I was speaking in that context, that we have to have secularism, not a religious theocracy, for the reasons you just mentioned. I don't want to lose my neck.
The reason I mentioned is that every worldview has people who persecute, who oppress, who do all sorts of things, and therefore to single out one is a fallacy of special treatment for no particular reason.
Yeah, but secularism is one aspect of running a society. I mean, then you have, So I mean, you can be secular and you can still be communist, but we don't. Yeah. I'm not proposing communism.
That's not the point. The point is why single out religion.
I just told you why.
If you say it's oppressive, so are other things.
Yeah.
So are other things. Where's the consistency?
No, there is consistency. So who's asking for communism? I'm not asking for it.
No, because if you were consistent, you would say the secular principle would then be to regulate the oppressive.
No, but that's just one word. But secularism
that's not one word. That's how it's defined.
Yes, it is defined
in opposition to religion.
It is defined in relation to
religion.
Why? That's right. So what's wrong with that? Because it's religion versus no religion. I don't understand your point on that. Well, no one is saying, so you can say, okay, you can have socialism or you can have hardcore capitalism. So in that sense, we say, okay, no, I want to be capitalist, no, I want to be socialist. So then we're not debating about secularism or Islam or Christianity or whatever. At that point, we're talking about that, how we're going to run the society, what type of economic system we're going to have. Mm-hmm. Then we talk about that. There's a different word for it.
Well, we are talking about that. We're talking about your favoured political system versus mine.
That is one of the favorite political systems, yes, when it comes to religion. Yeah.
How would you define your favorite political system?
Well, I could have
what would it be called?
I would obviously, I would call myself like a Democrat. Like I would have a democracy in there. I would have controlled socialism. And again, we're not going to go into that discussion. I don't want to go into that for now.
Okay.
But
secularism is a part of it.
Yeah.
Secularism is a part of it.
Yeah, but these different things.
We might wrap this one up here.
I really don't understand.
Out of the rabbit hole. I'm sure the Q&A potential is bustling right here after that one.
It's good enough.
Are we done? cross-examination?
Just quickly, we might wrap up the cross-examination there. Just quickly before we start the Q&A section, I want to just hit home. There are about 100 people in this lecture hall right now, and I'd just like to request you all, please avoid making statements veiled as questions. It's really not the best form, and so if we can keep it fairly short, not going down too many other rabbit holes. We'll try, if you want to address to a particular speaker, please feel free. If you want to address to both, please feel free as well. So we must start. Can anyone throw me a question? Right, first hand up.
Yeah, hi, my question is for Uthman. So towards the beginning, you were talking about how atheists use faith too for some theories such as the multiverse theory and things like that. But my question to you is, why for you is faith for you inherently divorced from evidence? Because if you say it like that, we have faith for everything. Like I have no hardcore proof that on my way home today I'm going to be murdered, or my food is poisoned, or really anything. There's no proof for like really fundamental things like that. So isn't it a question of what we put our faith in and how good the choices we make in doing that are, and we use evidence to the best of our knowledge to then use faith? How do you answer that? Like for example, just like with the multiverse theory, we believe that based on actual evidence that we already have, that versus faith in something like God, which has far less evidence. Isn't there a distinction between those two kinds of faith?
Yes, but there's no shred of evidence for a multiverse.
Yeah, but we have evidence for other things like such as evolution and.
Okay. I'll answer
it's connected in the sense that it obviously contradicts stuff in religion. So we use that, and we use physical things in science that we can prove and things like that to make that assumption.
Yeah, just not with the multiverse, of course, right? That's a good point. We do use faith. We should define faith. Faith is subjective knowledge. You don't have objective proof for it. Proof that we can talk about collectively as something one-on-one. And we use that. We do use faith in normal everyday life. The point is, given my context of speaking was where I started off with Boris Johnson in his pajamas. The point was to put up the mirror. I.e., the point is that if you're going to wave fingers at others and say, you guys believe in blind faith, you are mythical, you have no evidence, then you can't do it. Because that's the clear inconsistency. Otherwise, in a more, once we realize the more sort of humble epistemic understanding, you can talk about, okay, where is faith appropriate and where it's not. Right? But otherwise, in origin, in the foundations of a worldview, there shouldn't be sort of unsubstantiated belief that doesn't have any evidence.
I don't think atheists say that faith is inherently wrong. It's just like how well you collaborate that with evidence.
Okay, fine. So then my argument is all your pillars have no evidence, so they corroborate very well with any evidence. Scientism, naturalism, secularism, no evidence. No substantiation.
But
just claims.
Like atheists would argue that there's far less for religion, and that.
But you can't be far less than zero.
In terms of so like let's say we have lots of proof for evolution and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So based on that, we can make more assumptions.
No, but evolution's got nothing to do with this. What's evolution got to do?
No. Based on that, we can say, that contradicts a lot of what this says. So then I can make a more decent assumption of what you're saying.
In theory, yes, there may be certain inferences to be made and whatnot, but evolution has nothing to do with this. Lots of theists believe in evolution. Some believe it entirely, some believe it in modified forms. Makes no difference. Evolution just tells us about the how of how biological life developed from the very beginning to now.
But don't you think it would contradict the Islamic Quranic position of Adam and Eve?
A particular part of evolution, yes, but not theory as a whole.
Okay.
Hold that to cross-examination.
Interesting. Alright guys, can I get another question? Alrighty. So that one on the back first. Yep.
I just want to be direct. What are your proofs to disprove God?
Can't hear you.
Just address that.
Proofs to disprove God?
What are your proofs to disprove God?
Yeah, it's just Well, we've been asking this question for how long? Can you disprove God? No, you can't. So there you go. Therefore, God exists. It just doesn't make any sense.
You didn't say that. Come on.
Well, no, but that is.
If you say God doesn't exist, you need to prove it.
No, you can't. You don't have to disprove.
Then you don't say it.
No, what? All right. You don't have.
Yeah.
Question was asked to me, so let me answer that. That position or that question is irrelevant in that sense, because you can ask, what is the color of anger? Maybe you might think it might be red because of the red emoji that we use in iPhone, but that question that you can disprove God, that is not a way to even look at it, or at least, even if you want to ask that question, that would not prove your position. So you can probably be an agnostic, and a lot of atheists that I know would call themselves agnostic atheists, that the lack of evidence suggests that there may not be God. But if you look at God very vaguely, then you go, okay, maybe there is a God, maybe there isn't a God. But then you look into specific religions, that's where the gods that a lot of people fall in love with starts falling apart, because that's when you look at the scriptures, you look at the hadiths and the favorite messengers of those religions. You look at that and you start seeing the flaws in that, and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't look like the work of someone who would create such a universe.
I'll go up to the question in the back left corner.
In the spirit of Karl Popper, he's an epistemic challenge for both of you. What would disprove your positions?
Okay, interesting. I'll start with you, Uthman, if you want.
I don't think that it's anything particular about what we believe. Evidence to the contrary.
Something specific, I think. What would disprove? Nothing vague.
A strong definitive argument.
Still vague. Something specific.
Although I'll contest this premise here, that applies to science.
No, I'm asking you as a Muslim, you as an atheist, what would disprove your position?
I'm saying that Karl Popper's falsification theorem, Karl Popper is a philosopher of science, not a philosopher of...
Yeah, but I'm applying it in a generic sense here.
What would disprove it? You find manuscripts of the Quran that have 5 completely new chapters that we never knew.
Would you accept different Qurans in Arabic in different parts of the world?
Sorry?
All right, we might move on to Moses' answer.
I'm curious to know...
Answer his question first.
Yeah, we'll get you.
No, I'll come to that. My answer is very simple. I mean, if God shows up, he can prove all of us wrong. We've been looking for this benevolent God for thousands of years, and we've been killing each other. We've been having this kind of...
Look like to disprove
Exactly.
something specific.
That is my specific answer.
What I'm saying is, how would you identify this God that you would say would disprove your worldview?
Well, yeah.
What evidence would suggest that this is the God that...
Well, it would be a good starting point. Okay, I mean, maybe he's a good illusionist, and maybe he can turn this room upside down, and we'll all hit the roof. That would be a good start. So we can investigate further. So we can. This is how simple I am. This is how low standards I have to start looking into a deity that we have been told that exists. I'm not saying, okay, I'm gonna, maybe more smarter people would ask for more evidence on top, but at least the debate will move forward. I mean, what we've been told that there's this unseen God who's this grand puppeteer who's been watching all that, and that's what we have to believe in. We need some progress in that. Every other
aspect. The question. That wasn't my question. My question specifically was, what would disprove your atheism?
I think you.
I think I've answered that. I think I've answered that. Yeah. Okay. And I'm curious, why 5 chapters?
It was random. He asked it.
But you do know that a lot of Quran has been lost. You do know that.
Lost.
There is a hadith. There are a couple of hadiths that actually ascertain that. You are aware of that. The Surah Bakr.
Some verses have been abrogated. Did you talk about that?
No. Actually, some verses that actually have been lost. I can't remember if that chain starts from Abu Huraira.
No.
Okay.
Okay. I have to Google that one later.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Can I get
Yeah, question for Uthman. You mentioned two evidences for Islam. One is the literary empirical, and the other is that it formed the basis of the world for centuries. I didn't really hear much about that. So you said that one of the evidence was that it did really well in terms of making the world function. What was the second point then? Just if you're shaking your head, so what was the point made?
The point about the civilization was a known fact about the Quran. It was not an evidence for Islam or anything like that.
What was the known fact?
So among the known facts about the Quran, of which we can begin to think, was that it formed the basis for a world civilization.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on that.
For centuries.
My problem with that point is, I think history often gets ignored when we talk about Islam and what Islam means for the world. So the Khulafa al-Rashidun were killed. 3 of them were killed. It was within a period of 31 years. After that was monarchs basically for 150 years with the Umayyads, and then another 150 for Abbasids. So and within that context there was slavery, there was a lot of these kind of things. It wouldn't often be considered even Islamic under a lot of scholars today. So the Mahna, the Damlam, the second, Ijal Handla. So it wasn't what we think a perfect Islamic empire was for any period of time. There was a civil war for the first 4 caliphs. How does that show anything good? It's an empire.
Okay, well that wasn't my argument. The argument wasn't that there was a utopia. The Quran ended up in creating a utopia on earth where everything was good. That wasn't the argument. The argument was it formed the basis of a world civilization.
It was an empire. My point is
no, it was a caliphate, but we can debate that. But empire is a European historical construct.
Empires are the Sassanid Empire.
No, I don't agree with an empire. Because there's differences about how empires act and do various things. But the point is not that. The point was just that as one of the known facts, amongst other things, is that it formed the basis for this. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because when you think about those facts and who the author could be, in order to suggest that it's the Prophet himself, you really have to come up with this massive conspiracy where a guy comes out amongst various poets, beats them at their own job, struggles with them, beats them, establishes an empire almost single-handedly that lasts for so long afterwards, creating lots of good and yes, bad. That's human. That's part of any world civilization.
How all empires start. So you have, for example, Cyrus the Great. Out of all these odds, he became Cyrus the Great. We have the Mongols. They had one dude in the middle of a desert who became the largest empire ever. So
none of them started. No, that's not true. Historically, none of them started with one person coming out with a message that goes against everything that everyone else stands for. No, well, we can look at those details, but that's not by itself, right? That's one point amongst many others. And the point is just that you'd have to say he did this. It would become, again, like the fine-tuning and everything else, entirely implausible and outlandish. But again, the point here is, it's not saying that everything was perfect. It's not meant to be like that in Islam. You're right when you say even Muslim scholars or Islam would say many things happened that were not Islamic. But that reality is not against Islam, because Islam recognizes that this is the entire life is a human effort. It's never meant to be everything is good. There's always going to be ups and downs. There's always going to be civil wars and fights and this and that. Under a caliphate or under secularism or anything else, that doesn't make any difference one way or the other. Right? So it's not an argument from, we did very well, we must be right. It's not that argument. It's saying, no, amongst the various facts of the Quran and its civilizational success or its material success, amongst looking at what he knew and what he did before, what the people said, and what scholars, independent scholars say about its literary function, amongst all of this, there's a consilience of evidence to very clearly say that it was not him. And if you want to seriously think about that, you can look for other options, but we don't know of any. Right? And that's part of the case.
Alright, I saw that hand there go up about 90 seconds before we finished, so you must be eager.
Anything you see is really animated, I think.
I like it.
Harris, hi. So it seems like you couldn't really disprove God's existence, right? Fair enough, it's kind of hard. It feels like it's actually harder to have faith and not believing in God than actually believing in God, and there's so much evidence for it, rational evidence, as opposed to scientific evidence.
We'll love the double negatives tonight.
No, I don't think so. It requires more faith to form a worldview that there may not be a God. I don't think that would require more faith. It would require more faith to believe in a deity that I've said, waits 40 billion years and all that, and just whatever. So and then he tells us how to go to the bathroom and how we should treat our wives, etc. That sounds more ludicrous to me than to say, well, there is no evidence to believe in any God, hence there may not be a God. I've already said that the deistic idea is probably more reasonable, but I'm not a deist, but that could probably make more sense. But this God that we are told sounds very puny to me, so I think that requires more faith to believe in that God. I just cannot imagine that God who can be so intelligent, who can create such a grand universe, could actually get involved in such petty things, really.
All right, we might go to Lisa here.
So this is for Uthman. So in 15 Muslim countries, they have the death penalty for homosexuals by killing them through throwing them off buildings. I want to ask if you disagree with this.
I'm unaware this is the case, but I would disagree with it. In fact, I disagree with much more about things that are done in the Muslim world. And for the very reason I'm an
Do you disagree with that practice?
I said that already. In clear English, I said I disagree with that practice. Well, obviously you were expecting a different answer. But I disagree with lots of things.
So you hate apostates more?
And I think there's a problem. It makes no difference one or the other. There's capital punishment in the US, and people who don't like capital punishments could therefore infer something about the US because it's secular, it's capitalist, or whatever. What's that got to do with, But if you want to know my personal moral position, then I don't think it's appropriate for these states to be treating people like that for numerous reasons that go way beyond the scope of our discussion tonight.
Simple argument. All right, I'll get Mr. with the laptop service back there.
Okay, right. There are many religions out there. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hindu, Sikhism, esotericism, so on. My question to you is, what exceptional evidence is there that Islam is the correct one out of all of these other religions, or possibly the correct religion being one which we have not yet discovered, so to speak?
Can I go first, just very quickly?
Can I ask?
None.
Who was that addressed for?
I'll answer it. It's none.
Obviously, I believe in it, so he doesn't believe in it.
I know what Harris's answer was.
Yes. This is a common question, and I don't get why I think Hitchens popularised this originally, why they think it makes sense, or it's any sort of powerful question. There are many religions, there are many secular ideologies, there are many scientific theories, there are many non-scientific theories. Like how does pointing out that there is a multiplicity of views on a particular issue?
Because each of these views conflicts with one another. In the field of scientific research, as you pointed
you do
out,
what? What do you do in science? You assess the evidence.
The different...
Lo and behold.
The different scientific theories,
Yeah.
you look at the evidence
Right.
and say, well, this one is false, but with
Same
religion,
thing, same
that
thing.
never happens. No,
How
not
do-
one ever.
So I think this is where people think it's a powerful sort of rhetorical question, because you're bringing in the assumption that there's no evidence. I just gave you proofs and evidence. You may disagree with them, right?
I have ample evidence to show you that Ket, the god of chaos, is true.
Hey, good for you.
Subjectively correct.
Believe in it if you want. But my point is, the mere multiplicity of views means nothing except that there are a multiplicity of views. What do you do on any issue, whether it's scientific or religious ideologies or irreligious ideologies or, I don't know what, pineapples and watermelons that we were talking about earlier? You assess evidence. Everyone assesses the evidence for themselves, and you choose what you think is strongest. That's it.
I guess
How's that even a...
to clarify, why do you feel Islam is stronger?
For the evidence that I presented, it's
over something like Christianity or Judaism.
Yeah, well,
just to have tangible comparisons.
In each and every case, there will be a particular discussion to be had. Certain religions believe in God, certain religions will believe in multiple gods, or God trinities, something like that. Or we'll discuss, well, is it possible, is that even a coherent concept a human God. Is a human God a coherent concept, for instance?
Just saying in
And
comparison to the Abrahamic religion.
So, for example, with Christianity, the concept that God came down to earth in the form of a man. We'll talk about that, right? Likewise, Revelation. Revelation needs to be established in two ways. One, that it comes from God, and number two, that it's preserved. You can have that discussion, and I have had that discussion with Christians in debates in other areas, right? Likewise with Jews and others. But it's not a uniquely religious phenomenon. What do you do when you have multiple scientific theories? Or how do you judge between communism and liberalism? They're not religious ideologies. Like, what do? You look at the evidence, you look at the arguments. How do you determine whether you're right wing or left wing? Like, I don't honestly understand how that becomes a sort of valid question that thinking people ask.
I'm going. Anyway, so I feel like you've been giving diplomatic responses to every question that's coming without actually answering them. They're diplomatic answers, but they're not actually answering the question or the expected answer, I guess, which is fine. However, what you're saying is that you picked Islam to be your religion because of the evidence that is presented to you, personally to you, right? You disagree with Lisa's point on, Lisa's question with how LGBT people are treated. However, you didn't disagree clearly when Harris asked about apostates. So thinking that you want every country or every nation or every region or whatever to implement Islam as their law, or you would like to live in that world. And still not refuting that, I'm not sure why you're trying to avoid answering that, yes, I agree that apostates should be killed, and in a world that if it's implemented, half of us in this room are going to be killed because we're apostates. Or at least I am. My question, or rather comment is, I don't see why you're not answering the question directly. I don't understand the diplomatic answers and what you're actually running away from.
Done?
I'm sorry, I have to go. I couldn't wait.
That's fine. The reason you think it's diplomatic is because you think certain answers are right, and because based on your understanding, and because I'm not giving that, then you think he must. It's like I must give this answer because Lisa thinks it's right, and if I don't say what Lisa thinks is right, I must be being diplomatic.
That was not a diplomatic response, though. The other ones were.
None of them were diplomatic responses. I said I affirm everything that Islam stands for, right? But you have to appreciate.
Apostates.
Sorry?
Including killing apostates.
I stand for everything that stands. But this is the point. Why do you want to pick one thing? There's probably tens of things.
Only because I pick on one thing does not mean I'm ignoring the rest.
Well, you are.
That just means
obviously, it does.
That just means we're discussing about a topic.
No, but why pick it out of 10, 15 other things that...
It would concern a lot of people.
It's like telling me that, I'm going to focus on color orange because that exists and not everything else. No, they exist as well. But we're talking about color orange. So we're talking about a particular topic that you seem to divert from.
No. First of all, because Harris brought it up.
Are you supportive of apostates to be killed?
I stand for everything that Islam stands for.
You stand for
and this makes no difference. What? First of all, how does what I personally hold or don't hold have anything to do with the debate?
No, because you might one day...
Honestly. You're representing it. I'm sorry, just as you're representing it.
What's it got to do with the existence of God?
For an argument, you are representing that notion.
So what?
So what you personally believe in influences a lot of people here.
And he determines whether God exists or not? And he determines whether God is right or not?
It does influence.
Alright, I leave this one here. Can I get a question for Harris? We might do 2 more questions after this. And we'll do our closing statements. Can I get one question for Harris? With me in the front.
Okay. Thanks.
Alright, everyone.
Okay, so I think one of the core tenets of this debate has been the question of morality. It's very hard as a theist to conceive of a world where I wouldn't perceive my morality coming from God. So my question A is, when you posit the alternative of, say, secularism or something like that, A, the meta-narrative that morals progress over time, and you gave some examples of that. In that framework, A, can murder be right? So what I mean by that, can morals evolve such that murder is right? And B, from the epistemic perspective, you mentioned different sources of why you think murder is wrong because of suffering, etc. But if morals are socially constructed, how do you place yourself in a position to judge the morals of another society? So when you say that the Muslim world, for instance, as a society, as polity, can determine what is right and wrong, and you're not part of that society, how then do you say this tenet that they have or hold or permit is wrong? If it's from Parliament, and we're using the sort of motif of the alien invasion that you mentioned, if there was a Star Wars and there was a separatist Parliament, can they legislate that murder is right? If it's evolutionary, how can carnivores survive without murdering their prey? And if it's a mixture of these different sort of epistemes, how do you choose one to override the other when they clash? So A, the meta-narrative that morals progress, and B, how do you reconcile these various epistemes in morality?
Do we want to hone in on one particular point here? Do you want to try to cover that whole thing?
I think if I understand the question properly, I think you basically are saying how morality evolves, and at the same time where do we draw a line at that point? Is that what you're saying? Like if
yeah, so like if morals evolve, can morals ever evolve to the state that murder is right? Or if morals are socially constructed, how can you, as a part of this society, say what happens in that part of the world, which is a different society, is wrong?
How can we say that? Well,
without appealing to some objective fact or truth.
Well, no, because if you look across all societies, let's pick the case of slavery. Most of the Western society was coming up with the ideas that, okay, well, we should stop trading slaves, we should stop owning other humans. And then slave trade was still happening in the Muslim world. I mean, the Muslim world could actually say that, okay, no, this is your construct, we're not going to accept that, we're not going to evolve, or we're not going to evolve as society to the point where we no longer have to own slaves. So what you can do, you can show, and I think it was shown to the Muslim world as well, that to an extent that they actually abolished slavery. So whatever that is, so if you specifically go into why murder, I mean, again, I said that, so what type of murder would that be? Like, I mean, if I'm walking down the street, can I just, if I don't like someone, what they're wearing, can I just stab them and murder them? I don't think that society will actually devolve. We might have some examples where some societies have gone backwards, mostly because of religions. Some societies become theocratic from more so democratic or secular societies. They go back a little bit. But I'm an optimistic person. I like to think that maybe when you look at the human society in general, it actually evolves, and it doesn't tend to go back, even though it might go back momentarily. So I think what you...
Can you see how the notion of backwards and forwards assumes that there's a fixed point? So when you say that society is regressing to something wrong, you're based on what's your reference point for that being backwards and not forwards?
Like you said, we decide that what is progression. So let's just say we decide that this is progression. Okay, well, we're no longer going to engage in this practice, and then you go back to one point would be like, okay, we are going back to doing something that we used to do. So that would be a good reference point to start from. That, okay, well, for example, if you bring back slavery, now that would be clear indication that we have actually kind of gone backwards.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Though, what if we go backwards to something, like what I'm trying to say is that assumes that if you go backwards to something that we used to do, it's regression. But if I was to say, what if we go back to treating our neighbors fairly, or having better relationship with our parents, that the society is moving away from? So is it because what I'm trying to say is just because you're going back to something we used to do in the past, that in and of itself doesn't determine that it's...
No, but I would like an example. I mean, I don't think anyone would actually say that, okay, don't treat your neighbors or your parents well. I actually need an example. I can't think of an example where we actually would have that dilemma at any point. What would be your best example?
No, so I'm speaking at the realm of possibilities. So going back to the question, can morals ever evolve such that murder is right? Based on the epistemic basis that you said. So say Parliament legislates that it's right because you're democratic.
Yeah.
Because you're giving the general will, as Benoit and others would say, you're giving yourself to the general.
But I don't think it would happen. I don't see any examples.
So the Nuremberg trials
Yeah.
after World War II.
Yeah.
So the Third Reich under Hitler determined that the persecution of particular minorities was completely fine and in fact recommended.
Yeah.
And sometimes forced upon people to do.
Yeah.
So just because there was that authority, does that mean that it's fine?
No, I never said appeal to authority. So the rest of the world, that's why.
Yes, you did Parliament. You get together. You
No. I use Parliament as a form of deciding what can be done. No, but then we have other societies to look at. That's why we had the World War II, because the rest of the world was saying this is not right, which is why it is okay for the rest of the world to actually look into neighboring societies and actually do say that okay, that can happen, okay, or whether that's backward or not.
Yeah, so in a multiverse where the Nazis won, are you...
Alright, we're at multiverse.
No,
We're not going to multiverses.
I don't think multiverse exists.
We might wrap the Q&A up there, guys. What we might do is I might give each of our speakers a couple of minutes at their discretion for closing statements. Does either of you wish to start?
I think you can go first.
So quite. I'll just summarize, I guess. Again, going back to keep the forest in mind, taking loss in the trees. There's two different propositions here. They need to both substantiate themselves on their own terms first, whilst also critiquing the other side. I put forth some substantiation that can be considered and definitely needs further thought and further research for those who are not familiar with it. On the other hand, there's been no substantiation of anything tonight in terms of naturalism. Why is it true? It just is. Science is the only way. Why? It just is. Morality, I think you heard the conversation. There's no clear basis of why things are wrong or right under an atheist worldview. And I think the key problem that perhaps Harris is not apprehending is the difference between description and prescription, or positive description and normativity. This shows a conflation of what science is and what morality is by definition. Science, by definition, describes the how-ness of physical phenomena, how things happen. It can never tell you a should. It can never lead to A should be Y. It can only tell you A is Y. A does this happens, and they're all descriptions. You can't go from a description to a prescription. There's no logical connection. Hume taught us that. You don't go from an is to an ought. Right? That's the fundamental conflation that Harris is making, and that's why he will say, well, morals, parliament, not parliament, board, parliament, consensus. You can decide what you want, but there's no basis there. Right? You're always going to find problems with that, and none of them go beyond subjective things. So the point is, none of the pillars of the atheist worldview are substantiated. Why would you adopt them? Worse still, why would you go around, particularly for the militant quote-unquote variety, why would you go around waving your finger at others for something you yourself don't have? There's something more here. Clearly there's something much more here. It's not about the intellectual arguments. Much smarter people have clarified these points, as Harris has said, for hundreds of years. In recent times much has been written. There's something much more. Politically, psychologically, the times, neoliberalism, but that takes us somewhere else. That perhaps is a discussion for another time. But I think I'll stop with that.
Okay, I'll keep it short. I mean, I was definitely more interested in Islam versus secularism, not basically making philosophical arguments for or against God. Because my position is how I arrive at that, as I said in probably one of the Q&As, that the way we look at the question of God, that is a question that may never be answered. The point that whether you can disprove God, therefore God may exist or God does exist. May exist is fine, I could live with that, but the God does exist, and then the baggage that it comes with, that affects a lot of people, and that's what a lot of people have a problem with. I mean, if it was just a harmless position that God exists, fine, everyone can go and live with it, which is exactly why in that context I was talking about Islam versus, or any theocracy versus secularism. So we can have a common ground, but we can have a middle ground, and we can say, okay, well, let's not go your way, let's not go the other extreme. And that, I don't know why any sane person would disagree with that, because then you would have you would have to basically kill everyone who doesn't agree with you. Probably not trying to strawman you, but I would put my case as an apostate, and you've already said, like, I would have to lose my neck. I mean, that would not be a good world to live in. How many people would die? So my position, again, as I said, was more so defending secularism. In that sense, we could obviously talk about some other isms, but that wasn't the topic. I think it was raised before. I forgot to make that point. You said, well, there's no evidence for scientism. Well, science works. I mean, we see all these complicated arguments from philosophers, but they look pretty, they look sexy, they have they sound good, but it doesn't go anywhere in terms of contributing to society. I mean, we can talk all day about whether science leads to morals or not. The jury's still out there. It's not like only philosophers have a say in that. Some scientists actually do say that we might have we might be able to answer morality through that. As suffering is just one example. But anyway, I'll keep it at that.
All right, everyone. I'd like to extend a gracious thanks to both of our speakers for today. I believe the organisers from each respective society would like to endow you both with a gift for the efforts of the evening. Alright guys, thank you so much for coming tonight. I hope we all enjoyed the fireworks. I know I certainly did. Other than that, guys, we might sort out after them. We'll leave it at that. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank
I was really going to help you out. Thanks so much.
Oh, that's all right.